primera presentación de este día tenemos una mesa de discusión con nuestros invitados Javier Royo, Benjamin Giuseppe y Joshua Mitchell. Va a moderar la maestra Mónica Pecferrad y también el maestro Eric Campos. Muchas gracias.
I believe the designer still has a fundamental role as the connective piece between technology and ultimately the end result. I can't speak to what the future will bring, but as of right now, technology is not capable of doing original conception. Most technology just scrapes original idea, which comes from the designer. I have used AI as a tool, but it's always the end product. It requires my input further to assess what's being done anyway. I believe moving forward, technology will be a valuable tool. I'm not against technology. I think AI in particular can be useful in its own regard, but I don't see it replacing original conception from the designer. So I think the designer will maintain a fundamental role of being this connective piece that can use the tool to create new things, just like previous tools, a camera to create photographs, a table saw to cut wood. I do think ultimately, there might be some more challenging things down the line because it is such a dynamic, potentially, universe. But as of, again, I can't speak to the future, but as of right now, that's how I see it.
Hey everyone, I'm Josh. Thank you for having me. I'm from Vancouver and I work at a company called Array of Stars in Toronto. I'm currently the creative director in the immersive experiences place. This year especially, we've definitely gotten pretty deep into AI. All the way from helping us answer, I guess, a lot of the admin or new business development kind of questions, all the way into just recently getting into using Gen AI to see if we can generate images that go beyond just simple mood board imagery for, say, your pitch deck. There's a place in the, I guess, the business flow when a client who has no money and has not given us any money but is interested in working with us and wants to engage and see what we can offer, and then they ask for a response to a brief or an RFP. What we do is we definitely leverage AI in how it accumulates all of our information. So when we have Google meetings with the client, we also have a program like Fathom AI, which transcribes and documents everyone's conversations. We'll then use that conversation or those transcripts, and then we'll put them into our own kind of internally built AI persona that's in both GPT and in Google, and then we'll figure out what's the ask, what are the things that the client needs, and then from that's when we'll break out, and us as designers or as creatives and technologists kind of come to a common direction internally first, because you're totally right. We have done this as an experiment. There was a client that gave us it was maybe a fit, probably not a fit for our company. We do a lot of more visual stuff. They were looking for AI. I don't think they quite understood what AI really meant. It was just it's a buzzword in the advertising world right now. And they wanted to do a AI audio experience for a horse race track that took the sounds from that and then would make, music. So we're in the middle of looking at this and we're starting to ask, AI some interesting, are there any options or ideas? And lo and behold, the first answer it gave us was exactly what those guys get. So we kind of clued in that even the client is using the tool to kind of AI slop a solution that they probably didn't even really believe in the first place. And I think it's right now becoming very evident when original thought process is being kind of sped up or kind of 10x'd with AI versus a bad idea that is also being 10x'd with AI. And we will still have a need for us, but teams are a lot smaller now, which I think is a good thing, at least in the context of, say, the design industry versus, say, something more in the kind of art-centric, animation, long-form, narrative kind of industry. There's definitely two places that this kind of world plays in. I think, I just totally lost my train of thought there. I was rambling a little bit. We'll still need designers. Small teams are good because just like you right now, when you're working with your peers, you're in teams of like max 5-10 people for your projects that you need to get done, if that. So in the past, big studios, you end up working with sometimes like 20, 40, 50 people on a giant project. That's a lot of, I guess, muddying the waters on like what the communication can be, and AI does give us the opportunity to really distill what that communication can be. And in terms of relationships as creatives in this industry, which is the whole point, we're working together because we like each other's work, we like what we're doing, we want to kind of like engage with other makers. This really does foster a closer relationship, more so than I think it was in the past.
Yo coincido bastante con los dos, de nuevo. Creo que hemos vivido momentos anteriores en el diseño gráfico parecidos, no son iguales, ¿no? Como en los años 90 cuando nacieron las computadoras y todo el mundo tenía pánico a que se democratizara la capacidad de hacer un cartel, la capacidad de hacer una identidad. Luego no fue así, ¿no? Pero sí creo que ahora, y coincido, cuando haces algo con IA, se nota que es IA. O sea, y esa es la primera cosa que tenemos que tener en cuenta, ¿no? Evidentemente, yo ahondaría más quizá en esa parte que tiene que ver con la conversación. Me parece súper interesante. Creo que al final hay que recordar también que todo lo tecnológico ha salido del humano, con lo cual es humano. O sea, yo parto de esta idea de que también la inteligencia artificial es humana, o una simulación humana al menos, ¿no? En eso podemos convenir todos, y que sobre todo lo que creo que va a traernos, y es lo que ha traído siempre la tecnología, desde que los romanos inventaron las cuadrigas para vencer al ejército contrario, eran mucho más rápidos, eran mucho más potentes. La inteligencia artificial nos ha traído de nuevo, de mano de la tecnología, el incremento de la velocidad en los procesos. Y por ahí creo que es interesante. Yo, bueno, también como ellos decían, sí, yo la he utilizado de forma consultiva, pues con ChatGPT, de forma, pues eso, para generar un mood board, para ver por dónde puedes ir, para que te genere una primera formalización de un proyecto que no va a ser nunca esa formalización, porque es que nunca llega a eso, pero siempre será el apoyo para poder crear y para poder conversar con ese pequeño ser tecnológico que hay dentro de la computadora, ¿no?
Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, Moni, I think we should go a step back, because clumsy of us, we didn't properly introduce our guests. Sorry about that. So I'm going to make a very brief info about each one of you, because we're going to hear more about you later today. So we're going to start with Joshua Michi. Welcome, Joshua. He comes from Canada, from Vancouver Film School. He's, well, I'm going to tell this in Spanish, if it's okay. Es director creativo, artista digital, desarrollador de experiencias inmersivas y motion design. Okay. Después tenemos a Benjamín Gillespie. Okay. Gillespie, perdón. También nos acompaña de Canadá. Es enfocado a la ingeniería, arquitectura, tecnología LED avanzada, proyectos realizados con materias naturales y sustentabilidad avanzada. Y por último nos acompaña Javier Rollo, de España, de Chispunt Studio. Él es diseñador gráfico, ilustrador de historietas y creador y escritorio. ¿Sale? So we can continue to dive in this amazing topic. Sorry about that. Okay, so.
Thank you. I think, Benjamin, you wanted to say something before Javi was about to yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to add something. You were discussing, your medium, and I'll mention, I design lighting. So I work in physical objects. Ultimately, I actually have my own production shop. I have to physically build something. So with respect to technology and AI, I actually think I'm a little bit more insulated. There's a worry that is AI gonna be harmful to design, to creative endeavors. Fortunately, I can say, I actually, because I think about this a lot, being a designer of a physical object, I think there is a little bit more insulation because you're creating a physical object. Eventually it has to be produced. Now, production is different from design, but I think to a certain extent, interacting with a physical piece, you were describing accumulating data, for example, and then allowing AI to run with it. It's a lot more difficult with a physical object. Obviously, dimensions of a chair, you can put that in, AI can run with it, but there's a lot of qualitative aspects that I think it's going to be way more difficult for technology to address and run with that the designer will understand. I mean, that's a very human element. So just selfishly, from my own practice, it's nice knowing that AI actually will have a difficult time, at least this is my hope, totally taking over because of the realm that I'm in. Obviously, there's different buckets of design, but for physical object, those are my thoughts.
Great. Well, we continue to the next questions. Any other? No? Okay. These questions, it's about creativity, ethics, and responsibility. Okay? In what ways do new digital tools, from generative AI to immersive design, transform notions of authorship, originality, and ethics in creative work? And I'm saying that in Spanish. Tiene que ver con la parte de creatividad, la ética y la responsabilidad. ¿De qué manera las nuevas herramientas digitales, desde la inteligencia artificial generativa hasta el diseño inmersivo, transforman la noción de autoría, originalidad y ética en el trabajo creativo?
Bueno, yo hablo desde el punto de vista, yo soy diseñador, pero sobre todo soy ilustrador también, y la verdad es que el mundo de la ilustración, como sabéis, ha sido muy duramente golpeado por la inteligencia artificial, porque realmente no es el caso de nuestro compañero que trabaja con espacios, sino que nosotros realmente creo que el gran problema de inicio y de saque ético también de la inteligencia artificial ha sido el hecho de que no se tuviera en cuenta a los creadores para partir de sus bases de datos, de su trabajo, y ahí generar realmente una inteligencia artificial que tuviera un ADN, porque esto hubiera sido posible hacerlo y es posible hacerlo. Quiero decir, imaginad una inteligencia artificial en la que cuando agarran tu trabajo previo consentimiento, evidentemente, cuando alguien lo utilice, marque esa imagen generada que tiene un 1%, un 2% de este autor, un 5% del otro autor, y que de esa forma también hubiéramos sido todos coautores reales de las imágenes que aparecen. Creo que eso fue el gran error de inicio. Bueno, ha sido un error que tiene que ver con el capitalismo, evidentemente, y con la velocidad con la que se intentó implementar y la carrera de la IA, ¿no? Tiene que ver mucho con esto. Pero dicho esto también, claro, yo creo que también es la evidencia más bestia que hemos tenido hasta ahora de que ningún creador, como se pensaba antes con el romanticismo, es autor absoluto de su obra, ¿no? Digamos que siempre que trabajamos estamos utilizando referencias que tenemos alrededor de gente que ha pasado antes, de diseñadores que han pasado antes, y desde ese punto de vista, pues la inteligencia artificial está copiando ese algoritmo real, ¿no? De la creatividad, que tiene que ver con la creatividad. Bueno, yo espero que siga siendo una herramienta realmente, una herramienta de conversación y una herramienta con la que elevar tu trabajo y con la que poder usar los humanos a la herramienta y no al contrario.
It's a great question. I do think AI is ripe for abuse in those regards. I think, especially with respect to a capitalist approach, always needing to create something new, a new product, it can be abused because people will come in and they'll feel the need to create a new product, and I think there's an important distinction between a designer and a plagiarizer. someone who's essentially using AI as a tool to create a modified copy, they're not designing in my case, or in that case. So I was saying before, you know, I'm a physical object designer, I'm a little bit insulated from AI from other designers, but someone coming in and copying work, then using AI to put a spin on it, I don't consider that design. So in terms of authorship, I don't think that someone, an entity or whatever, using AI in that sense, I don't think they've authored anything in that case. They've copied and put a bow on it. I do think, you know, again, AI can be used as a tool for to maybe aid original conception, but yeah, I think there will be a lot of abuses by bad actors, by people with malicious intent, just to make a quick buck. And I think it'll take, you know, I don't know how to address that, but that will be something that has to be dealt with, because again, you're going to have people that, in my opinion, aren't designing; they're just finding their way to create. And one other thing I want to add, I think derivative work is okay. I think you can use work as inspiration, put your own original input, and then come up with something new. I think that's great. But taking a photo or taking something and then just plopping it into AI and having it spit something out, I think that's, you know, that's not surprising. It's very, very problematic. So.
Definitely. Okay, so as an artist versus a commercial artist or a designer, there's definitely a big distinction between that. And before AI, and I'll speak to mostly the like motion design, digital kind of media world pre-AI, before like the internet and social media, where did you get your references? It was probably a library or your own life experiences. Then we had the advent of social media, we had Instagram and definitely Pinterest, and then everyone adopted those, and suddenly we started to see a homogeneity of just general design work. I can remember in like 2008 to probably like 2013, there was definitely sort of like a golden age of original artistic content coming into the kind of like motion design, motion graphic space, but that definitely started to kind of like look the same leading into like 2018, 2020, and definitely in today. This is driven mostly because clients want it cheaper and faster, and we have to work with that. Now with this, now the other thing too is there's a little bit of like an unspoken self like curation, or within the industry you have a reputation, and it is still a very small world. We are more connected than ever. Like you will very quickly, in 10 years in the industry, you'll probably be known or know who is like the real movers and shakers. You'll know who are the tastemakers and the curators who are really coming up with their own stuff. And those institutions, those design studios, internally have their own mechanism to allow creatives to really like make their own voice. Maybe they feed that into the LLMs, but it is very evident when you can see someone just kind of like grab the AI, not really understanding it or learning it, and kind of using what it has, you know, its models or systems, you'll start to see the sameness. And I think we can even see it now, like in creative writing. You can tell when someone's writing AI now. It didn't take long. Like a year ago, you know, there were people coming up with like essays and books and stuff, but suddenly there's a lot of M dashes, a lot of like this to this, and then it was this, kind of like there's a cadence, there's a lot of like pattern repetition, and suddenly that does devalue the work that you're making. I think we are all kind of, like it's a collective, you know, culture coming to seeing what those patterns are. We are pattern-based kind of people. So I think like you're going to see, we're in that age where it's still novel, so you can kind of, people that aren't good are going to get away with it a little bit, but as with every new technology, there's going to be those who kind of rise above, but there's also people who are outright like not using it. And I mean, I can probably speak to a couple studios, or maybe I shouldn't, but in Europe particularly, it's not like AI isn't really being as fastly adopted, say, as it is in America or Canada. And I think it's pretty evident. They can prove me wrong, but there is a studio called XK, and they came from like a procedurally designed kind of like material ecology perspective on all of their digital work. And it is really like, they are the trendsetters right now. They're doing something totally different and new, and AI cannot get that. Like, eventually that work will be stolen and kind of aggregated into these big walled garden, you know, like startups, or like, you know, the Googles, the OpenAI, and et cetera. They're going to steal it, and if they pass the law where they're allowed, in America, where they're allowed to just outright take copyright, then this is an interesting inflection point, because now we used to think IP was like, we hold it together and it's valuable and you cannot touch it. When that goes away, I think we're going to see an interesting new thing happen. It's going to be very disruptive. Now on the other side, there are open source models that are being made by people who are trying to be ethical about this and do not want to steal people's work. I think like Stable Diffusion, Comfy UI, they are trying to get into that space. And in that case, using your own internal LLM to throw your own work into that thing to help you speed up your own process. Like, I love the tools that I work with. You know, I use Houdini and Unreal Engine and Blender, and these are all like, and Touch Designer, these are all like, we're trying to get to real time. Like a musician with an instrument, when you play music, it is you expressing yourself now. And in the digital technology space, that takes more time to get there. And the longer time it takes for you to think of an idea and express it with some form of media, the longer that takes, the less true it is to your like artistic kind of like perspective or point of view. These tools will help that. I do have an example. There is a guy named Robert Frost in Canada. He's a well-known illustrator, character designer. He was one of the 2 or 3 people that designed the characters for the Gorillaz, the like music group back in the day where they did music videos with like animated characters. They were really stylistic. They're like really cool shit. He's done a lot of work for Love, Death, and Robots, and he's done 3 episodes. And then the most recent episode, he used his Comfy UI and his own work and fed it like his body of work into that. And then instead of having a team of like 35 artists and designers working with him, he got that down to like 10 people. And in Cinema 4D, they would use the block-in process. So like, after you've got your sketches for the narrative, you then move into like a previs block-in process. It was literally like the simple cubes, unlit, just to get the background and the camera set. They would then plug in Comfy UI to put all of that work and then overlay it and make like beautiful environments immediately. And that time spent on something that is considered like a little bit more, it's work he wanted to delegate, and rather than having a legion of people do that, he wanted to have down to like 2 or 3 really talented people who understand these tools to make that happen, so that the character animators could spend more time hand animating those characters. And it is, you can really see the evidence of that when you go see, I think it's called like 400 Boys or 400 Babies. I think that's like a really good example of how we should be using this as creatives. But I mean, as we're learning about these different tools, you have to acknowledge, like, recently we did a pitch, and we had like a moment of like, holy cow, look at this style frame. And my ECD, my boss was like, oh, Josh, did you make this? And I was like, oh, I used AI. But it's weird that I said that like knee-jerk reaction, because before AI, I used Houdini. I don't go, oh, I used Houdini to make this style frame. I'm like, I did that, you know? So there's still like a weird cognitive dissonance. Like, I can still see we're in this world where like AI is doing so many other things that I'm almost completely like giving up my agency and delegating to make this thing happen. Sure, it did something pretty cool, and in the commercial space, in the pitching of like, I have 2 or 3 days to get something good for a client, it's good enough. But I may share some stuff at my presentation about that, but it's not something that's going in my portfolio. It's not something I generally would outside of the conversation of AI, would I publicly like be like, yeah, I did that. I still feel like it's a robot or it's something else that's doing it for me. So we're still in that space, I think.
Okay, well then, thank you very much. From an authorship perspective, have you ever been in a situation where you have been questioned about the certain projects, especially for commercial projects?
Can you elaborate exactly?
Yeah, if you want to register some of your projects, when you use generative AI, have you ever been questioned that you didn't do that because it was made with AI?
Understood. So I actually, the most I've used AI is for photo touch-ups. I've yet to use any sort of AI for original design conception for the actual physical objects that I'm selling. I'll focus on using AI with respect to physical object, how that would affect authorship. As I said before, someone coming in using AI with, to your point, using your own baseline content, I think that's great. I think that's a very powerful and appropriate use of the tool, and I think your authorship would remain, because you're essentially just using a tool to further your original conception. It's also interesting tying it to IP, because a lot of this does butt up against copyright. What is your authorship? I don't think using AI to refine your original conception should impact your authorship too much. I think, well, it depends, I guess. That's the answer that a lawyer would give you. But it would depend, but I do think using a tool to refine your original conception, it should be okay in terms of authorship. I think it depends for me where you're pulling your source material to input your design. Then it gets pretty murky, because your genesis, your starting point has already been muddled. To me, that's when authorship kind of goes out the window. But if you're remaining true, for example, you gave great examples actually, and it's not physical object, but isolating and only using your previous work to put in, I don't, you started from your own, you're starting from your own conception, and I'll be honest, I haven't used AI a ton, so I'm not totally familiar with the dialogue that you have with it. I did some research prior to this, but again, it's just having not really used it. But if you're directing it and you're driving the boat, AI may be the boat, but you're the one still piloting it. I think within that very defined or that confined realm, I think your authorship can still remain. For me, it really becomes an issue when you start diving into where's your starting material, where's your starting conception, was it yours, was it someone else's? To me, then it's completely thrown out the window.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so as a designer or in the creative space, authorship, I think everyone in the advertising industry is using AI, and a lot in that early phase, a lot of behind scenes, whether it's used for your like administration or your new business development, like non-AI gen visualized stuff, and then, as I said before, a lot of mood boards. Even in like 2022, when I was freelancing at the Mill, their creative team, like their creative leadership team, definitely had their own internal LLMs and were using that to elevate those mood boards, or hopefully get to a place where you could create imagery that was close enough that the art directors and the designers could then leap off from that and like move forward. So that's happening. In terms of your own, so if you want to build your own IP, you want to write your own book, your own novel, or you have like an immersive experience or a franchise or what have you, anything that's really kind of like in that purview of intellectual property, I do not trust these models at all. Like, they even have little buttons, they don't let you know that you're they are automatically sharing your stuff back into the Borg mine for sure, right? And I've noticed this a lot on the Insta slop, that there's a lot of entrepreneurs right now being like, ideas are cheap, it's just, people don't steal IP, don't steal ideas, or it's easy, it's not very valuable. Actually, I'd argue against that. Execution is important to carry an idea through, but the inception of a great idea, you should be keeping that to yourself. You should do everything in your power and your capability to bring that to as close to a minimum viable product as possible before actually sharing that out into the real world. Maybe after you've got some form of established kind of like authorship and ownership in almost like in a physical manner, like then and with like law being able to help you make sure that you're protected, then maybe you can use these tools to kind of like, if you're making a book, maybe it's good for editing. If you are designing like some sort of like visual immersive experience, maybe that helps you with like part of that early adoption creative process. But if you don't go into protecting yourself, you're giving away, you know, ideas that are just being amalgamated into a giant search engine. So anytime someone has a very similar, like, there's definitely more than just you having a great idea. Like, there's many people in this world having the exact same idea at the exact same time, and it's really a race. Like, it's a weird meta race about you trying to, who's going to actually bring it to the real world first. That has never changed. That's just been the way ideas happen. But yeah, you definitely need to protect yourself. I do not trust these models whatsoever to like help you get an edge or something, because there's going to be a time, if not already now, where someone has designed some form of AI persona or some semi-agentic or full-on agentic like model system that is directly scraping and looking for good ideas that have not been taken ownership. That someone was like writing a really cool premise or idea for a TV show. They're absolutely doing that. That's like a 100% thing. So yeah, like if you really have a great idea, now that's not to say that you should be talking about it with people in the real world. There's definitely like a break happening between this like techno-feudalism that's happening and like our local communities and how we interact with each other. Like, I cannot trust my phone and what it tells me anymore. I can't trust any media that's fed to me on any of these platforms, but I can have less skepticism and give you the benefit of doubt if we're having a one-on-one conversation, right? And I mean, like, that also gets into like why our societies are so divisive. These machines are definitely like making sure that we sit in our own silos. We have to like come back and talk to each other. So I do think the value of human beings in your originals, in your like living space, is becoming more and more important, especially as this like dark future we seem to be coming into is becoming more and more real. Like the only way we can combat that is really by being more embedded in our communities and being more active with who we know are real people.
Coincido muchísimo. Creo que muy poca gente trabaja sola en un estudio. O sea, creo que la inteligencia artificial es una persona, no es una persona, es un elemento más dentro de todo el equipo. O sea, quien crea que es un genio y que tiene la autoría única como persona de los proyectos en diseño no es real, eso no existe, con lo cual incorporar a la inteligencia artificial como una parte más del estudio, pues me parece, bueno, es lo que se está haciendo, ¿no? Pero también desde el punto de vista también de cuestionarla. Quiero decir, también creo que estamos asimilando que la inteligencia artificial tiene la verdad y que a veces ese es el error también, ¿no? Cuando tú le preguntas algo a ChatGPT, te lo dice y no lo vas a contrastar y se está inventando algo. Entonces eso tiene que ver con la confianza también de la que hablaban ellos, ¿no? Con la confianza en un equipo en el que parte del equipo es ese robot de inteligencia artificial, si no los queremos imaginar como un robot, ¿no? Y creo que cada vez más yo pienso, ¿no?, que el diseñador gráfico, pero no es de ahora, tampoco es algo que haya venido con la inteligencia artificial, es un director de orquesta igual que lo es un arquitecto. El arquitecto no acaba construyendo el edificio, ni mucho menos, ¿no? El arquitecto es alguien que tiene la idea, que la lleva adelante, que puede agarrarse a un montón de referencias alrededor y hacer consultas y tener conversaciones con todo su equipo y llevarlo a cabo con todo su equipo, pero no es ni el autor único ni el autor material. Y esto en diseño gráfico es lo mismo y ahora es más evidente, sin más, ¿no? Y como tal creo que tenemos que hablar más de una creatividad conectiva, de una especie de lugar donde estamos muy conectados y, como decía, igual que ocurrió con la invención de la aviación, que ocurrió en el mismo momento en dos puntos de la Tierra diferentes, no conectados, ocurrió porque realmente el momento cultural había llegado para que y tecnológico, para que se inventara la aviación, ¿no? Y eso va a seguir ocurriendo. Quiero decir, al final lo que pasa es que la tecnología está muy conectada a la cultura del momento. Entonces, conforme vamos avanzando y se van generando nuevos paradigmas dentro de nuestra sociedad, en lo que ahora creemos, lo que son nuestros valores actuales no serán los mismos que dentro de 10 años. Entonces ahora mismo estamos trabajando con la misma materia. Y realmente el diseñador gráfico al final, no, perdón, hablo de gráfico, el diseñador en general lo único que hace es amasar los conceptos, amasar las ideas y tirar para adelante proyectos a partir de esas ideas, ¿no? Y lo dicho, para mí es como si alguien se cuestiona si por utilizar Adobe Photoshop no está siendo el autor, o hay que poner Adobe Photoshop también como autor, ¿no? Yo creo que es uno más y ya está, y es así.
Gracias. Joshua, you said something, you just said that we cannot trust anymore what we see in our telephones. I think we are already in an era of misinformation where we have to have a trained eye when we have to difference between what is made of AI, generative AI, and what is real, okay? So everyone nowadays is using AI, and everyone will be using AI in the future. So we have to train our eye to difference and don't fall into certain mistakes that can cost us very high. So we're going to continue with the next topic. It concerns a lot to the university. It's about education and the formation of future generations. What kinds of competencies and sensibilities should future designers develop to balance technological thinking with empathy, culture, and sustainability?
Okay, so university, you go to university to find out your own limits. It's a place for you to, don't worry about a job. Don't worry about that future of trying to get employment. Honestly, that's not something that's important while you're in these institutions. You're here to learn great critical thinking skills. You're here to mix with an insane amount of different perspectives, international people and cultures and different views, and chew on each other's ideas and explore new ways of thinking, and also push your own limits. For example, when I went to VFS, it wasn't to get a job, it was actually to be held in a space that I could push and literally fall down. I needed to go until I crashed out. To develop your own taste, your own eye, your own thoughts. That's what a university is first and foremost meant to be. You are robbing yourself of that opportunity if you lean too hard into these tools. It's important to know how they're used, but my best friend just became a PhD in sociology at the University of Toronto, and the faculty has to wrestle with this problem of everyone. It's obvious that the chase of the good grade has overshadowed the reason for learning in the first place. That first and foremost. In some sectors, a diploma or a degree is how you get your job. If you're in the creative space, that does not matter. And no one cares about a piece of paper. They care about the work and they care about your thinking process, because if you're great at making superficial ideas and in the middle of a project, you can't adapt to a client making an 11th hour change because you don't have the capacity to know how to adapt and change. You're screwing the whole business. You're affecting other people's livelihoods by having that mistake or having those lack of skills. Now that being said, he's a PhD and he's smarter than any AI system out there. He has original thought and a weaponized grade of critical thinking skills. And from his perspective, he's a Luddite now. He's full on rejected this. He's not using social media. He writes his ideas down on paper. He does not put it into Google Docs. He does not put any of that thinking. He believes that writing is the best way to deeply understand, I agree with him, deeply understand high thinking and how you internalize. It's a kinetic kind of means of learning and intaking information. And even at that level, you have citation, which is the most important thing for your dissertations or your thesis. And if you don't have the skills to know where your citations are to defend that, then you use AI. Like I can make a report in Gemini, like a deep research report, but how many times I've seen a Reddit post as a reference? Like AI, it's like bad information to start with, but it's framing this as like a way to answer my question because it's trying to be helpful. There is really no like critical thinking or dissemination implemented into any of these models. So you're here to learn. Like maybe, I'm not saying you're never going to use these tools, they're not going anywhere, but like try to go as far as you can on your own accord before having to lean on these. Or even better, lean on your friends and lean on the people that you work with. Like lean on their expertise. That still has great value, and I think the product will be stronger because of it.
I think that's a great answer. I don't have a ton to really add to that. I guess just for the sake of being devil's advocate, you know, showing the other side, the only thing I would say is I really do agree with you. But just for the sake of this discussion, you know, if this is a tool that's not going to go away, you know, you want to embrace it to a certain extent, I guess, and I think you even touched on that. I mean, you want to learn because if this is the future, you know, you learn, but you have to use it responsibly. To your point, I mean, that's pretty much it. I agree. I mean, I strongly agree with that. School is the time to learn critical thinking skills. It's in the working world, the first job you get, second job, you'll learn the things you need to learn on the job. And you'll learn them because you've gotten the great critical thinking skills here at school. Now, you'll learn some substantive things for sure, but to the extent that AI will exist down the line and you'll have to use it, you know, that's the only scenario where I could see you being open to using in this academic setting, but you really have to be careful with it. I mean, says the person who doesn't really use AI now. So, but strictly saying that for devil's advocate purposes, because I do strongly agree with what you said.
Yo soy profe también, soy profesor, y siempre les digo a mis alumnas y a mis alumnos cuando cuando empezamos el curso, que lo más importante es que trabajen y que adivinen qué animal son y que trabajen en ese animal, ¿no? Y que realmente intenten seguir su propio camino. Y ahí habrá, bueno, pues habrá animales que usarán la inteligencia artificial y otros que usarán un lápiz, y para mí es exactamente lo mismo. No tiene ninguna, para mí no hay ninguna diferencia. Sí creo que con el lápiz también tienes que tener una responsabilidad, porque no se lo puedes clavar en el ojo a nadie, porque si se lo clava sangra y se puede morir. Y con la inteligencia artificial pasa lo mismo, es otro tipo de responsabilidad, pero con todas las herramientas hay que tener una responsabilidad. Cuando estás cortando la carne con el cuchillo tampoco se lo puedes clavar al de al lado y sigue siendo una herramienta. Entonces, yo sigo diciendo lo mismo, o sea, creo que también estamos en un momento muy de fascinación frente a la inteligencia artificial, cuando pienso que la inteligencia artificial realmente sigue siendo humana y hay que tratarla como humana. O sea, es un elemento humano más. Es como si dijéramos que la rueda cuando se inventó no era humana, era completamente humana. Lo que pasa es que nos iba a ayudar a llevar pesos sin rompernos la espalda. Entonces aquí creo que sobre todo creo que lo que hay que enseñar es, sí, esa parte de ética relacionada con la inteligencia artificial, de no clavársela a nadie en el ojo, ¿vale? Pero también esa parte que decíamos antes de decir, tú eres alguien que, o sea, con los alumnos hay que trabajar el concepto, ideas, creatividad, y tener en cuenta que nada que no tenga un concepto detrás fuerte, nada que no tenga una idea detrás fuerte va a sobrevivir como proyecto. Es así. Entonces, bueno, si la inteligencia artificial te va a ayudar en determinados puntos, como hemos dicho antes, ya sea de forma consultiva o de referencias con un chat GPT antes de empezar el proyecto, siempre teniendo la idea y la guía de lo que quieres hacer, o luego en un momento dado para hacer que una presentación sea muchísimo más espectacular, etcétera, de lo que es tu trabajo o en otros puntos, me parece perfecto. Pero yo creo que es muy importante pensarnos la creatividad, pensar el valor de las ideas y sobre todo pensarlo de una forma honesta, que esto es muy importante, ¿no? Y por eso digo que cada uno somos animales diferentes, porque lo que yo hago no tendrá nada que ver con lo que hace nadie de esta mesa, y todo es completamente válido, ¿no? No sé si... Entonces yo creo que sí, que ser directores de orquesta en tu proyecto, ¿no? Y saber, a mí la inteligencia artificial me ha hecho sentirme más poderoso realmente, ¿no? Y luego en la presentación que he traído en mi conferencia veréis que, por ejemplo, antes era imposible diseñar una simple ruleta en HTML que diera vueltas y que se parara en un momento dado, y con ChatGPT me lo hace en 2 minutos, pero la idea es mía, es para aplicarlo ahí. Está ok, está perfecto, no tengo ni... todo funciona. Yo creo que nos hace sentir más poderosos, ¿no? Y está bien.
I think so. Your own taste, your own like lexicon, the ability, like learn the histories, internalize that in whatever industry you want to specialize in. Understand like how the communication is, what kind of words, what kind of esoteric words are people using. The more that you go deeper into exploring your own speciality, and if you have to use these tools, you will see better output from it. There is one more thing that I want to add to this that is, I think, we're definitely seeing. The more you use these tools, you're always negotiating how much of your own agency you're willing to give up. And there are people today that have these on their phones that are almost like on the rails. They literally are doing what the ChatGPT tells them to do based on, it just seems so helpful. And then we're seeing people who are reluctant to get into it and are critical of what the tool is that are going to be using it. And then I think you also see like a whole group of people who are outright not going to use it. And it's a weird thing. There's this kind of like caste system that is starting to develop within this stuff too. So that to me is also a little alarming as well. But at the end of the day, like if it all shut down, like if we didn't have AI, if we didn't even have like a lot of these digital tools, could you still do your job? Like think that way. And I think at that very base level, if you could competently still do what you want to do, to make what you want to make without these tools, then you're still in a good spot. And you should keep trying to test yourself against that kind of theory all the time.
Go ahead, Benjamin.
And just to add on to that, actually, it could be seen as an opportunity. If so many people are using AI and, going off of what was said before, if this is AI's pulling from a pool and everyone has access to this pool, let's just simplify it for a second. It starts to become generic and amorphous. And if you withstand that, it gives you an opportunity to maintain a unique voice, and it might become really apparent. As good as AI can be creating deep fake videos, your design actually will be very distinctive. And suddenly you could make a name for yourself saying, hey, like I have distinctive design. Like even if you use AI as a supplement, as a tool, as we all said, you've kept enough of a barrier that you're not being pulled in, you're not in the quicksand falling into the AI trap, which is another reason to really hold it at arm's length, because you don't want to be influenced by it, you don't want to have it influence your design too much, and it's just, even with the improvements of technology, human ingenuity will still exist, human creativity. In a room of how many hundred people that have the ability to be creative, you have to be able to tap into that, and for those that are able to use it to its fullest advantage, it'll give you a big advantage.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we're just running out of time. Before heading to the next activity of our Congress, I will ask you if you could give our students one small message to them just now that they are struggling with AI thing. What would you say to them?
Oh man, that's put me on the spot. Again, as someone who doesn't really use it, if you're having trouble with AI, there's a reason you're here in the first place. You're here at university. There's a reason you're supposed to be here, and I would focus in on yourself. This tool might be leading you astray. I think use your advisors, use your peers to the points made otherwise, reset, figure out a way, be introspective, think about what your strengths are, and if it aligns with AI, maybe you can figure out a way to use it, but really be true to yourself. As cliched as that sounds, you have to understand what your strengths are, and if it aligns with AI, great. If not, find a different pathway.
Grades aside, or maybe this is the reframe, if you're using AI, a lot of the time it's because you need to save time, and or you feel like the idea you're fleshing out isn't really where you're at, and the deadline is looming to bring in the report, and you're going to get graded accordingly. There's nothing wrong with having a bad grade. Like, what's worse, having like a bad grade or like a mid grade because you used AI and you didn't learn anything from it, you just gave your teacher a report, like you wasted everyone's time, or having a bad grade where you were like, I tried really hard, like I genuinely, this is the moment of like, you should be vulnerable, you should be open about and honest with yourself and your peers. Like, if you're struggling with a particular concept or idea, that's what your teacher's really here for. They're here to actually help you climb over that mountain, and that's why you're here. The grade is kind of a loose way of like keeping everyone in check to see like, is this program going okay, or how much struggle is happening here? How much attention does the teacher really need? It's also checking in on yourself and knowing that, is this path you're on the right path? I mean, like, in university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I originally was like a fine art kid, and I dropped out. I failed. Like, my teachers were like, you're not good in the contemporary fine art space. And that sucked, but it was a hard reality for me. And then it turned out that like design was much more aligned with the way that I kind of see the world and how I wanted to like make a living. I think that AI, like I imagine that in that time, if I had used AI in a way that it kept me going down that path, I probably would have led to like irrelevance anyways, and that learning lesson would have come a lot more harder and probably with a lot more wasted resources and time behind that. So it's okay to fall down. This is the space for you to do that and learn from those lessons, because that's how you will become a more well-rounded human being because of it, right? You'll be more honest with yourself.
Yo vuelvo al mundo de los animales y creo que es muy importante seguir tu propio camino, saber qué animal eres, aprender bien antes todas las herramientas que tienen que ver con la conceptualización, con las ideas y sobre todo creer en tu trabajo, pero la gran pregunta sería en qué soy yo diferente al resto, ¿no? Y qué quiero aportar de forma diferencial. Y desde ese punto de la diferencia, trabajar con lo que te dé la gana, realmente. Pero porque tu intención es seguir tu camino y tu intención es mostrar cosas que no sean las cosas de siempre, que es el gran problema que tiene la inteligencia artificial ahora mismo, que al final acaba dándonos resultados muy parecidos, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, confiar en una misma, trabajar en ello, aprender antes a conceptualizar lo que es el proceso creativo, el proceso proyectual, y a la vez tener asignaturas, yo creo, que ayuden a entender la inteligencia artificial de una forma sana y potente.
Well, thank you very much. I think the message I would like to send you is that don't be a bridge between technology and your projects. Be creators, be designers, okay? So, Javi, Joshua, Benjamin, thank you very much for your time, and let's go for the next activity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a nuestros conferencistas. Muchas gracias a la maestra Mónica Perferrad y al maestro Eric Campos por dirigir esta mesa de discusión. Gracias.